Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be doing a video that's slightly different, well actually very different to my usual videos. I am doing a segment around trying to really get into the minds, heads and hearts of people around a very specific topic. The topic of today is going to be the idea and the sentiment that I've seen floating around a lot more lately, which is that life was better under apartheid. So unlike my other videos that I kind of like freestyle speak from the heart, I've actually prepared a presentation for this one because this is quite a serious topic and I want to make sure that I'm being as responsible as possible in sharing on this. So I thought that a good way to start would be to share a little bit about my connection to South Africa and why this topic now. So I was born during apartheid in Ga, South Africa, which is close to Pretoria. And as a result of growing up in a black township and going to quote unquote white schools, I think that I was constantly aware of the difference in treatment between white people and black people, colored people, Asian people, Indian people, but especially the difference between white people and black people. And so I feel like because of the life experiences that I had at such a formative time in my life, I have formulated and have built up a lot of stamina for being able to listen to various perspectives, but also straddle different worlds, if I could call it that. So what do I mean by that? Living in a black township, going to a white school, going to school that is a Catholic school for girls, but having African spirituality being something that we practice, not that much, but we still practiced it at home. Going to a Catholic school, but being Lutheran in faith at home. Also having this unique perspective where I, in my lifetime, have had the opportunity to live in a black township, but also live in white areas and also some of the most, I would say, rich countries like the US and Sweden. So I feel like I've had a very, very interesting life experiences that have shown me upfront and personal how different people live. And so that has created an interest in learning about other people and learning how people move through the world and what their perspectives are and various topics. Also, I currently live in New York City. I moved here in 2018 after a dream that I had. I'll talk about that at another time, but I want to make it clear that I'm not one of those people who left South Africa in a huff and a puff. I was actually quite sad to be leaving South Africa. I came to US and to New York specifically because there was an opportunity, because I had met someone that captured my heart, and it just made sense. In 2017, I came for a visit, which converted into me deciding to move here for a longer period of time. So why this topic now? I have actually been aware of this topic for a very long time, since a very long time. I remember being young and hearing older black South Africans in my neighborhood uttering this in passing as if it was a simple thing. And obviously because I was part of the rainbow generation, it was heart-wrenching, confusing to hear as a young person. And then I grew older and I understood what people were meaning by that or what that sentiment was coming from. But before I get to that, I wanted to also just get through my presentation and then I'll share with you my own personal thoughts around what I think people mean when they say that. The other reason why I decided to start this topic now is because I've been seeing it float around a lot more on social media. And in my mind, if someone is saying it on social media, there's a lot more people saying it in their homes, and there's a lot more people thinking it and not sharing it verbally. So to me, I took what I was seeing on social media as a good temperature check on what people were talking about. Of course, I'm not saying that everyone is talking about this, but it gave me an indication that if people were feeling bold enough to share these topics online, it meant that a lot more people were talking about it. So I saw the hashtag, and if you go to the hashtag on Twitter, you'll see a lot of interesting perspectives. So what I initially did was I put out this open call to say, hey, I'm working on a video where I'm exploring sentiments around the current state of affairs. I was particularly interested in this on that day when I sent this out, because I am somewhat stuck in the US because of a visa situation that I've been waiting to lift off my shoulders for the past 3 years. And while I'm in this visa process, I can't leave the country, which has been devastating for me. I don't want to talk about it too much because it is going to make me emotional. But to cut a long story short, I am not able to leave home. And for me, maybe because I haven't been home in a long time, I have come to that place where I'm kind of romanticizing home. And not that I want anyone to knock off my rosy tinted glasses, but I do think that regardless of what happens at home, I am a diehard South African. I love South Africa. I love South African people. As someone who's traveled a lot, South Africa is where it's at. You know, growing up, people used to always say to me, you know, when you can go to any country in the world, even the so-called first world countries or rich countries, but South Africa has this spirit, this atmosphere, botho, or as it's said in Guni languages, ubuntu, that you can't find anywhere else. And that is so true. I miss home so much, more than I can actually express. I should do a separate video about that so I can cry in peace. So yeah, as I was saying, I sent this out and I received some feedback. So what I saw online before I get to the feedback that I received was 4 main categories. So there was one category of people who felt like it was not worth discussing for various reasons, whether because it was too triggering, because it was too ridiculous of an idea, or a non-starter, a conversation non-starter. Then there were other people who felt like there is no comparison. You cannot compare the two because you would have to have a baseline of comparison. You're comparing a system of governance where only 10% of the population was being provided for, or a much smaller percentage. And then you're comparing it to a system of governance where everyone in the population was being provided to and catered to. And so that was the second perspective. The third perspective was a lot of people who were scoffed at the idea and thought, only white people could think this. Like, there's no way. This is a white sentiment that's coming from frustration with the fall of a white government that prioritized white needs and white people, right? And so a lot of people felt like it was coming from that perspective. And then number 4 were people who felt like life was better. And the interesting thing about this sector of people is that it wasn't just white people. I've been seeing a lot of young black people or people of color expressing this. I've also seen a lot of older black people expressing this, as I mentioned before. So to me, it is quite concerning and interesting, and it's piqued my, curiosity around understanding why people feel this way. So what I decided to do was I have compiled 2 voice note perspectives that I feel like are more nuanced. That because in reality, if we think about it, most people straddle the fence. And these 4 perspectives that I've pinpointed here are just beginning to scratch the surface of how many other perspectives were out there. But I had to kind of find a way to summarize this. Otherwise, this video would have been an hour. Those of you who follow my other videos will know that I can talk. Okay, so for the sake of succinctness and getting to the point, because in many ways I see this video as part 1 of X, I don't know how many. I'm hoping that we can do like a call-in show where people can call in and share their perspectives, and then we can have a panel discussion with people who have, either studied this or who are very invested or who have been thinking about this for a very long time, because I've also been seeing a lot of articles that have been coming up that are relating to this topic. So the first person who shared is Noluthando, and I will let her share her perspective.
Hi Didi, I just saw this post and it's so triggering for me, and sorry, apologies if I cry during what I'm going to share, because people throw around the phrase that life was better under apartheid. But for me, it is so triggering because I was raised by my grandmother. Brief history of my grandmother. So my grandmother we're from an area in Newcastle. We're from an area in KZN called Newcastle, and I grew up in the township of Matadin. So my grandmother were one of the people that lost their land and their cattle within a weekend because of the Group Areas Act. Right, and for me, that for me will always be a painful story because I lost my grandmother last December. And for me, justice, even in the form of getting the peanuts for their land, they had never gotten it in 20 years of democracy. But more than that, what's more painful for me about that statement is I look at my grandmother, right? My grandmother was a woman full of potential, but born in the wrong era, right? My grandmother did not finish school because of the Group Areas Act. But yet my grandmother persevered and achieved so much in her life, right? But she was not a professional. She went up, so she started as a domestic worker. Then from a domestic worker, she started working in the factories. Then from the factories, she went up until she was supervisor there, right? And for me, when you are saying, when the statement says life was better under apartheid, for me, I look at my grandmother, my great-grandmother, and the potential that they carried, but the evil system of apartheid denying them to reach their fullest potential. And for me, that is why I will never understand that statement that life was better under apartheid, because of the opportunity cost of the woman that raised me, where I'm sure one of them could have been a top exec somewhere, or one of them could have been a top lecturer somewhere. But because the system did not enable them to thrive, because they looked, I'm struggling to find words, but because of the color of their skin and their gender, they were limited with opportunities. So I'll never understand that statement. But at the same time, to be honest, the ANC government has not played a role. And I speak from privilege, because the reason why I'm saying this, I speak from privilege because I had a mom who understood what education meant and invested in my education at all costs, right? So my mom took literally a gamble with my education, and that's why I've been able to thrive in life, right? But in this country, it's becoming to the point where for you to succeed and for you to thrive and for you to get justice, you need to have very deep pockets. And probably that's why people feel that life was better under apartheid, because at least they knew the demons that they were facing with and the demons that they were dealing with. So it's a complicated topic, and it's a topic that's very dear to me, because I still live in a town with a whole lot of white injustices, a whole lot of farm people that are treated as subhuman, where their dignity is taken away from them. And for me, that is one of the most painful things ever, where to see an old man at the back of a van, but yet the white person with the dog in front of in the car simply because he's black. I live in one of those towns where it's a constant reminder that you are black. And I'm just rambling a bit, but for me, that statement cuts deep. It tears me apart, and I will never understand a person that says that, because for me, apartheid was more than the actual system, but it was, there's a quote by Dr. Mzamo that I need to send you. But for me, it was denying a young, black and gifted child an opportunity to thrive and to reach their fullest potential. And it didn't only affect them, but it still affects me 3 generations or 4 generations down, because I am now first generation black in corporate and having to navigate those politics with no mentorship and with no social capital in that space. So yeah, it's a complicated topic, and yeah.
As you can imagine, it must not be easy to put yourself out there to share your voice, talking about something so sensitive. So please be kind in the comments. And if there's any of you who feel similarly to Noluthando or have anything to share with her, please feel free to leave that in the comments. Next up, I'm going to hand over to Zwelenkani, who also had something to say on this topic.
First of all, well, let me begin by introducing myself. Mina nginguzwelenkani Mdlalose, and let me follow that by expressing my gratitude for opening this conversation in the very concise way in which you have done. Firstly, I think it is historically inaccurate, based on our understanding of what a human being is, to say that apartheid was a better political, social way of living than currently is the case. I think that's a very, not only is it incorrect, but it is extremely painful, considering how the end of apartheid was not achieved for free. It was not a free gift given to us by F.W. de Klerk. Utatu Mandela will be the first to remind us, of course, that he had to pay 27 years. Just by himself, he had to pay 27 years. So you can imagine collectively how much we paid for white wealth, to put it frankly and bluntly. Having said that, one must be kind to someone who might hold those historically inaccurate views, insofar as there is a level of pain in being betrayed by your own. It's understandable. Right? It's understandable to be consumed by a lion, because that's what lions do. Right? But to be consumed by your own, that is, of course, immoral in most cultures, right? In English, the term is cannibalism. So, as far as the ethics of our subjugation to inequality and poverty, as far as that goes, yeah, there's a particular sting when it's, coming from within. Excuse the rhyme. Again, thank you for the opportunity, for giving me the opportunity to express these views. I trust and hope they will be helpful. Thank you.
I feel like of all the perspectives I could have received, of all the voice notes I could have received, these two people who have very generously shared their perspective, shared in such an eloquent way, and I think they speak for a lot of people. I feel like there's a lot more nuanced narrative, sentiment, perspective that's out there, and I would love to hear from more people. So I'm going to be taking a concerted effort in the next couple of weeks to reach out to people that are willing to share their perspective either on a live show or through a voice note, because I'm really fascinated by this turn of outlook on the country, especially because I was part of the Rainbow Nation generation, which has its problems, trust me. And maybe I'll do another video about that at another time, because I spend a lot of time thinking about how that impacted the way I view the world. And so If you have any comments, any thoughts, any perspectives to add or to co-sign what's already been said here, please do. Now, I wanted to just add a little bit of what I think is coming into this when people say this. I feel like when older Black people say this, it's coming from a place of life was simpler under apartheid. I don't necessarily think that life was better under apartheid. I think life was simpler because things were predictable. You knew what kind of jobs you could get. You knew where you were and were not allowed to be. You knew what you needed to do in order to go a certain place, even though the idea of a dompas is one of the most condescending, disrespectful, cruel things you can do to someone in their native country. But there was a system that was reliable, that was like clockwork, that made life somewhat simpler in the sense, not easier. Please understand the difference. Simple as in, I have 5 options of jobs I could get. I can go to this place, but if I want to go there, I need to do it this way. There's a curfew. I have to be home at a certain time. So what's simple about that is that you're being told what to do. And please don't mistake me saying this as me saying that people enjoyed being told what to do. No, I'm just talking about simplicity. Compared to the world that we live in now, where there's so many new technologies that older people are having to grapple with, it's moving at such an exponential rate. I mean, I'm a millennial and I am not even on TikTok. There's so many trends that I'm missing. Like, I just feel like the bus is just moving and I'm not getting on the bus. You know, there's just some things that are moving faster than they were before. The fact that we have AI that can create art, AI that can write for you. I mean, that is exponential growth and speed that I think for older people can be quite like causing whiplash and can make things seem like they're out of control. I think when young people of color or Black people are saying it, they're coming from a place of frustration. There's actually an article that I found from 2017 written by Eleanor Duploy on News 24 that specifically speaks about the sentiment of young Black and people of color around this topic. So I'll link that in the description for you to read at your own leisure. I think it's got to do with unemployment and feeling like there are no opportunities and access to resources, which I think for many people can be likened to how people who lived through apartheid in their teens felt, you know, in the sense that they didn't have access to resources or access to the labor market. So, I mean, the unemployment rate in South Africa has stayed at double digits for a very long time. And I think for a lot of people feels like it's getting worse. And I think you lose hope if when you're young and you feel like, okay, when I finish school, I'll have opportunities. And then that time comes and it just doesn't happen. Or you go and you study and you can't afford to study and then you can't get a loan and all kinds of things that can really lead to feeling pessimistic about your future. Rightfully so. I can understand that. And then I think there's the white people who feel that. I don't even feel like I have to expand on that. But if you were being catered for and you were the only one who could get the things that you want and you get preferential treatment, that's the reason why. There's actually a clip that's been circulating on social media about what white women were saying about life in the 60s. And I think Nadine Gordimer is in that video as well. I'll share a link to the longer video. One of my gripes with social media is that these days there's this clip culture where you're clipping 2 minutes or 30 seconds of like a 2-hour interview or an hour interview. And I'm like, well, and then also there's no context. Like, where's this video from? Who shot this? What year was this? You know, so that's my frustration. That's why I'm a bigger fan of YouTube than any of the other platforms. But in any case, I'll share a link to that so that you can see. But essentially, if you were on top of the world and you got subsidies for everything and you had a pool in your backyard and you lived in the best areas and you had basically maids supporting you on everything that you needed to do, including cooking and washing your underwear, I can see why you would wish it was like that. You know, there's a quote that says, if you are privileged, equality feels like a downgrade or something of that sort. I'll find the quote and I'll put it on the screen. But that's what I think it's coming from. And then I think it's a lot of what Noluthando and Zwelenkani was saying, which is that there's a disappointment in the government because there was an expectation that we would have been further along at this point, that we would have achieved more. I think there was so much hope when apartheid ended. I actually remember the feeling. I was very, very young because I was born in 87, so you can imagine how young I was. But I remember the spirit and the energy in the country. The atmosphere was optimistic. People had such high hopes. And I think this sentiment, when people say life was better under apartheid, is a way of expressing the deep disappointment that people feel in the current government, that we handed over this government to you in confidence. And not only was it handed over, there was blood, sweat and tears, literal bloodshed that came out of people fighting for a better South Africa, only to be handed what people feel like is lackluster, if not maybe worse in some cases for people. The corruption, apparently, as you've heard and you've been seeing, I saw the ESCOM interview, my jaw was on the ground. People are sick and tired. Okay, sick and tired. So I think that's where it's coming from. I need to go now, but I really wanted to leave it at that point and to really ask the question, what is your feeling and your thought around this? Please feel free to write to me. I'll leave my details in there. If you want to send a voice note, my number is in there as well, so you can send me a voice note on WhatsApp. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts. Also want to share that I do not take this topic lightly. I am fully aware of the pain, cruelty, and the human rights violations and death that has come, and pain that in many ways will, for some people, will never be able to recover from. The way that apartheid has set people back generations upon generations. I see it in my own family that we are still catching up. Yeah. So I don't take this topic lightly. I do take it seriously. I just wanted to start the conversation somewhere on this channel. And I'm not saying start in an arrogant way like I'm the first one to have this conversation. No, I'm very aware that this is a conversation that's been happening in other places for a long time. I just wanted to have a container for it, and I wanted to try and host a space where we can have it in a way where we can be responsible, but also hear other perspectives. I'm going to end it there. I hope you're able to find some time to write to me. I'll also be reaching out to different people. So I'm here, I'm available. And please leave your thoughts in the comment. All right, I'm going to go now. Thank you so much for your time.